Try this again. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. We're going to call to order this meeting of the Tennessee Alarm Systems Contractors Board for Wednesday, December the 18th, 2019. Ms. Bess, will you please call the roll?
Scott Cockcroft.
Here.
Doug Fraker.
Here.
Keith Harvey.
Here.
Vivian Hickson. Here. Lou Richard.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Have the members had an opportunity to review the agenda for today's meeting, and if so, a motion to adopt?
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Fraker, a second by Mr. Harvey to adopt the agenda as presented. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Now we have the minutes from the October the 17th, 2019 meeting. I think those were approved by signature, and a motion to approve those.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Harvey, a second by Mr. Cockcroft to approve the minutes from the October 17th, 2019 meeting. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, are we going to do the legal report or the appearance?
We can do the appearance.
If it's all right with the board, I'd like to go ahead and do an appearance, look at our appearance. These individuals have come from Memphis to speak with you, so that's going to be your Exhibit A. I believe it's Bruce McMillan and Tiffany Collins. Has everyone signed in that's going to speak? Oh, I did. Oh, I'm sorry, I mispronounced your name.
Gallon, that's fine.
No, it's somebody else. It's a different.
Oh, it's somebody else. I was going to say, no, I didn't.
But just introduce yourself to the board for the record, please.
Well, thank you. My name is Doug McGowan. I live at 347 Stonewall Street in Memphis, Tennessee, 38112. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Mayor Jim Strickland in the City of Memphis. Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and board members. I want to say thank you for your time and for allowing us to appear today before you. It's a real pleasure to be here and talk with you. I understand that the City of Memphis has a ordinance on false alarms, and I understand that's been the subject of some discussion here. And so I wanted to come and provide some context for how things are playing out on the ground in the City of Memphis, and then also answer any questions that the board may have for us. I'm joined today by Ms. Tiffany Collins, who is our Metro Alarms Administrator, and also Mr. Bruce McMullen, who is the Chief Legal Officer for the City of Memphis. So in the City of Memphis, we have approximately 300,000 commercial and residential properties. 83,000 of those properties have availed themselves of a commercial alarm, either fire or police alarm. Of those folks who have availed themselves of an alarm, the very vast majority of them understand their alarm system and use it for the intended purpose, and they're actually very helpful in making sure that we get job one right, and that's protecting life and limb of our citizens. And our police officers and firefighters very much appreciate the opportunity to be able to be there that much faster when something is happening. There are a select number of individuals, however, that have not understood either how to use their alarms or using them improperly. In the City of Memphis, when we started in 2016, we were just shy of 70,000 false alarms a year. It was in the mid 65,000 false alarms per year. So for every single one, and those are false, not verified alarms.
What was that number again, please?
65,000 false alarms when we started in 2016. And so when we get one of those alarms that are false, it means a dispatch of either a firefighter, a truck with 4 firefighters plus the dispatcher's time. If it's a police officer, there's a dispatcher, the call taker, plus at least 1, maybe 2 police officers that are responding. They're on scene for approximately 40 minutes at a minimum to clear that false alarm. That's a significant amount of manpower. In dollars and cents, it's about $12 million of cost to the City of Memphis that we're not recovering any benefit from because it's a false alarm. And so we took the opportunity to look at our ordinance and determine if, with our goal of reducing the number of false alarms, we in no way want to decrease the use of alarms for their intended purpose. In fact, they are very helpful to us. But false alarms, quite frankly, deter our ability to respond to valid alarms when we have them. And so we've done that with our ordinance, and we put into place an approach that would decrease the number of quote-unquote free false alarms, where previously we didn't really take any action, even notify that you had a number of false alarms until you had at least 6 false alarms in 1 year. We reformed that. We brought that number down. We implemented a $50 fine and a cost recovery model. I'd like to go back to the numbers for just 1 second. Of the 300,000 residents and businesses in the city of Memphis, 83,000 have a permitted alarm. And as I said, fully 50% of those never have a false alarm. About 50% do have 1 false alarm. Actually, it's something less than that. But there's only about 12,000 of them that have what we would call a finable offense. In other words, they've had more than 1 false alarm, and they will receive a notice from us that they had a false alarm and potentially a $50 fine. More than that, there are only 1% of that number, about 1,200, who we would call abusers of the system. Those individuals have more than 10 false alarms a year. Some of them have had as high as 100 false alarms a year. Some of them have 30 to 40 false alarms. Clearly, there is a problem. Success for us looks like not dissuading anybody from getting an alarm system, but from ever having to issue a fine for a person because they've had repeated false alarms. More than that, the people who are abusing the system, all of our collective systems, by not either learning how to use their alarm or not fixing a problem with their alarm, they are detracting from our ability to respond. In the city of Memphis, we have an authorized complement of 2,400 police officers. Like every other city in America, we are struggling to recruit and retain police officers. We have 2,100 in our complement right now. So I can ill afford to have anybody off chasing a false alarm when in fact there are probably real responses that they need to make. The same in our fire department. It is routine in our fire department, because of the volume of calls that we get, for us to run out of equipment and ambulances because we are responding to things that are not real emergencies. Now, we get that through 911 as well, and we actually have an aggressive program of community navigators to help individuals who are chronic 911 abusers. They're using the ambulances for a ride to the doctor or across town, and we have taken a dramatic turn there as well. We've had about a 15% reduction in chronic abusers of the 911 system. You may have heard of them, the frequent flyers. That is the same approach we're trying to take here with the folks who are kind of the frequent flyers with false alarms. So what are the results so far? We started with 65,000 a year. Since 2016, we have dramatically reduced the number of false alarms to below 40,000. This year, we are on pace to be well below 40,000 false alarms. Again, I'd like to reiterate what success is. For us, I would like to not have any chronic abusers of the alarm system, first. Second, I would just like to have a reduction in the overall number of false alarms. With 80,000 alarm users, even if 50% had 1 false alarm during the year, and that's the free false alarm that they get, that's still 40,000 responses that I have to go on. And so that's what we're trying to do with this program, is to educate owners. We put an educational program in place so that we can educate folks how to do that. We've worked with our local alarm board to make sure that these practices are pragmatic and that we're working with our alarm operators. I do want to say just a couple of things before I wrap up and take questions. We had an attempt in our original ordinance that we thought, with this number of registered alarm owners, that we would have the alarm companies perhaps collect the annual registration and pay it to the city. We heard from the alarm companies that that was just impractical, and there was a change made to the policy that we tried that. Okay, it was rejected, and so we've moved away from that. So the individual owners, that's the business owner and the homeowner, are now responsible for the annual registration of their alarm. And we are fine with that. Ms. Collins does a great job of managing that for us in our city. There was a misperception that the fines that we were issuing, up to a $50 fine if they went to court for having a number of false alarms, and the cost recovery would be charged to the alarm company and then to the customer. I just want to be clear. We have never contemplated that. We have never proposed that. We are not thinking of proposing that. This is about the end user, the person in the home or the business who is using the product that the alarm companies are putting in place to help the public safety system. And so we have never contemplated that, nor will we ever contemplate doing something like that. Ours was an efficiency measure, thinking somebody like ADT had 30,000 customers. They have the customer list. If they could just say, here's your annual renewal for all those 30,000 customers, it sure would be easier than Ms. Collins getting 30,000 envelopes or 30,000 online invoices. Again, we understand that is now prohibited from us doing that, and we're fine with that. We just like to move on with the operation. We are seeing pretty dramatic reductions. We're seeing pretty good compliance. I will tell you that it is increasing our availability of ambulances and fire trucks. It's increasing our availability of police officers to respond. It's been a number of months now since we've run out of an ambulance because we're not off on a false alarm. So I just appreciate the guidance. I appreciate the input we've had from the alarm industry in working with us and alongside us, especially at the local level. Mr. Cockcroft, I know, has been involved with us at some of the discussions that we've had, and so we're very thankful for that. We are earnest in making sure that we can do job one. That's to respond to valid alarms when people need us to be there with our police officers and firefighters, and we appreciate what the alarm industry is doing to help us be there that much faster. So with that, I'll take any questions that you all might have of me.
I thank y'all for what you're doing, and I understand, at first you were wanting to pass the registration fee to the alarm companies to collect, which I didn't agree with, and I don't think anybody else on the board did also, but considering you're now dealing with the alarm owners, whether it be business or resident, directly, I think is a very positive step. And you find the end user, if they exceed the number of false alarms in a year, you find them directly. You're not involving the alarm company in the process,
That
correct?
is correct, Chairwoman. That's absolutely correct. It goes directly to the homeowner or the business owner. Doesn't have anything to do with the alarm company.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Other questions?
Now, you mentioned fire trucks and ambulances.
Yes.
Have you really had a large problem with false alarms that would require fire or ambulance response?
We do have a number of, they're not nearly the volume of police, but the volume that we get for is different for police and fire too. We get about 2 million calls a year in our 911 center, both to our emergency and non-emergency number. An interesting number we have daily in our 911 center, we receive 133 false alarm calls to our 911 center. And for folks, our neighbors up the street in Bartlett, a town of 60,000 people, they receive less than 100 911 calls total in a day. So 133 false alarm calls per day in our 911 center. Bartlett doesn't even get that many 911 calls. But you're right, Mr. Cockcroft. The fire truck is the very small portion. It's the burglar alarms that are, may not be using the right, the burglar alarms that are going off that we're responding to. But we do have a good number of false alarms, of fire alarms. We have, as you know, people who are doing construction work and failed to tag out their alarm, and the dust is setting it off. We had St. Jude, one of our real first-class residents down there and a big contributor to our economy. They were doing, they're doing $1.8 billion of construction work, and I had to talk to Rick Shadiak, their CEO, and say, Rick, this is like your 15th false alarm this month, and they, please don't fine us for this. We're ALSEC, we're St. Jude. But I said, well, you got to tag it out or have your contractors do something different. So we do have spikes, especially in construction, but it is not nearly the problem as police alarms.
The other thing that I've seen as an alarm company, though, is a lot of people are just opting to not have us call the police, which I think is a bad thing that's happening. I mean, they're responding themselves in place of the police at times and putting themselves in danger. That's the reality of some of what's happening with this. Your calls have gone down, but that doesn't mean that now we've got private citizens going and checking on their businesses and homes by themselves because they are worried about a fee. And I guess our bigger concern is, I assume why you're here, because we had sent a letter, there's state statute that limits the fine to $50. And I know you've changed and you call it a cost of recovery, but I think the intent of the law was still would include your cost of recovery in that. We differ on that. I don't know where that gets solved, but if somebody, I assume that's why you're here. I don't know.
Well, actually, we're here because I understood that there was some discussion, and we thought it prudent to come before you so that you could ask us rather than asking a third party who may have a different opinion or less information. We're here, open book. We make no apologies about the maximum fine is $50 by state statute. It doesn't matter what you do for a municipal violation, it's $50. That doesn't come close to recovering the cost of sending a police officer or doing our dispatcher. Our cost is based on data. It is factual. It is on the actual cost of response. That's $90. So that is the cost recovery that we put into place. And I guess, again, just to put it into context, one of the things that I've talked about before, again, of the 300,000 property owners in the city of Memphis, 80,000 avail them of a commercial alarm, and only really 4% of those are the ones that are having the false alarms, meaning that 96% of Memphians are being denied an opportunity to have service by the 4% who have not figured out how to use this very useful tool.
But you've also scared some of those others that don't have false alarms. They just don't want to even risk it. They're saying, don't call the police, call me.
I understand, sir. And I guess I would also say that there is a huge upside for the alarm industry. As I said, I'll say it again. There are 300,000 residents and businesses. Only 83,000 have a permanent alarm. That means there are 217,000 other opportunities out there for individuals who are not yet alarmed that I think might be a good opportunity for us. And again, if everybody has an alarm and we can keep people from having the false alarms, and I think this is not uncommon for other cities. People do not want to send unnecessarily public safety assets to a place when they know they have other needs. So.
You also had an ordinance for a number of years that was never enforced. There wasn't really anything wrong with the other ordinance, and you had fees at certain levels, and it may have averaged out. But if you really want to stop the false alarms, it's not about money. And you've had non-response in there as well. If you've got somebody that's setting off their alarm 10 times, 100 times a month, they ought to be on non-response.
They are. We've rolled that out with our commercial businesses. They are in verified response, so they just have to call and say, yes, this is a verified emergency, and we have that there. And I will say that I can't speak to, and again, I realize I represent the city of Memphis and all 200 years of our history, but I can only speak to what we have done since 2016. And like many other issues we've had in the city, we've tackled them head on. We had, just as an example, we had about an 18% live release rate at our Memphis Animal Services some number of years ago. We had to make a change, and we're now among the top 5 shelters in the country with 91% save rate, and we're technically a no-kill shelter. Our 911 system, we were meeting the national standard 44% of the time when we took over. Now we're meeting it 97% of the time, and we're in the top 911 system in the top 5 in the country for our response time, less than 6-second answer time. We're applying that same model of process improvement driven by data to every single thing that we do, and Metro Alarms is no different than that. And so, again, I can't apologize for taking action that I think is appropriate based on what the data tells me. And what the data tells me is prior to 2016, we had an average of 60,000 false alarms every year, and we were doing nothing to change it.
But you had an ordinance that wasn't being enforced. You went from one extreme to the other.
I agree. That was also, again, 196 years of history. I have 4 years under my belt. And
why not enforce what you had before going so extreme?
Well, we did, and under that previous policy was 6 false alarms, and we had the ability to send you a letter. And so we think that on balance with what we've seen, this is the appropriate level. We had a recommendation about following a policy that would have reduced false alarms like Atlanta did and seen a 20% reduction in 5 years. Well, we put our policy in place and saw a 20% reduction in 1 year. So we believe that it's working. And so the old policy was that you had 6 free false alarms per year before we sent you a letter notifying that we would please request that you would do something to reduce your false alarms. Now you have 1 free false alarm a year. 2, excuse me.
So 2 per year?
Yes. And then you reset after a 12-month period of time. So your second, it's not in a calendar year, so once 12 months has elapsed since your last false alarm, you're reset back to back to zero.
What criteria determines whether or not it's a real or false alarm?
We count on our police officers who are on the scene, or our firefighters who are on the scene, to do an investigation just like we do. They have the same standard of care that they do to determine whether a crime has occurred, to determine whether an alarm is false or not.
And I can say that Tiffany's been very gracious to work with people if something was deemed a false alarm that turns out to not be. I know she's worked very hard to correct those issues.
Yes, sir, and I appreciate you saying that, because I did fail to say that, and we very much appreciate that. Is one key difference too. We had spotty ability for people to come and challenge that alarm. We now have a very formal process that people can come back and say, hey, look, this was not a false alarm. And the baseball saying of the tie goes to the runner. If there's any question, we defer to the property owner and say, okay, that's not going to make or break us. And if they have enough fortitude to come and talk to us and say this really was not a false alarm, then we understand that they're already coming into compliance by virtue of the fact that they have approached us and said, we'd like to challenge this. The folks who are, I guess, the scoff laws, the ones that have 30 some a year, 40 some a year, they may not care to come and challenge one of those 30 alarms.
Do you have any outreach or education programs to try to deal with these excess offenders?
Yes, we do.
What are you
If I could
using?
describe that, Tiffany? And I'll let Ms. Tiffany Collins talk to you about what the outreach has been. Go ahead.
I'll sign in a second. Tiffany Collins, Administrator, Metro Alarm Office. We have a couple of different things. We recently just did a public outreach campaign. We sent postcards out to every alarmed household, and they go to the website. There's FAQs and there's tips on how to reduce false alarms. Additionally, we have a full-time sergeant that is assigned to our office. He pulls top offenders and he goes out to homes and businesses and he talks to people and tries to get a better understanding as to why their alarm is going off and kind of help them get back on the other side. So those are the two main things that we do. And we're also in the process of educating our police force, so when they go out, they can probably offer a little more information to the users that they see frequently.
Thank you. More questions?
I don't think so. I mean, I really think it boils down to we've got people coming to us making complaints and wanting us to do something about it, since it's our law that says, it's the statute that we're over that says the fine's limited to 50. It's just, I guess, a differing opinion on whether the cost of recovery. Do you charge cost of recovery on all police calls or other calls, or any other call for that matter?
For
Anything other than alarms, do you charge a cost of recovery?
if you use an ambulance service, there is a cost to that.
But any other police call?
No.
And what is your current fee? Did you change it? Did you say it was at $90? Did I understand that correctly?
Cost recovery fee for police services is $90. Yes, ma'am.
Is that the same for fire if there's
No.
a false fire alarm?
No, ma'am. The cost recovery fee for fire is $250.
Okay.
And the difference there is that it literally takes 4 people to take an engine and put it on the street.
You mentioned complaints. Could you specify what type of complaints are you getting from citizens?
Well, one was an industry complaint, but I'm not sure what other we had for.
So the way this was first brought to my attention, I'll speak to myself, I'm not sure what the board was privy to. We received an email in the board office that included some news articles, as well as just a complaint regarding the additional fees that they felt were that exceeded the law. And so that's what brought that to the board. That's what prompted us to bring this issue to the board.
Is the cost recovery aspect that y'all receive
Right.
complaints?
And like I said, the way it was brought to us is that all of this was under the false alarm fine, and that's what prompted me to send the first letter to the city of Memphis. And upon receiving your response, I gave that response to the board. They opined on that. I'm sure that transcript is online as well, which prompted Mr. Lyons to come in, and then we're here.
I'd like to say I certainly appreciate that. I appreciate the dialogue. And the one thing I know that we're aligned on, everybody in this room, is that we want to be able to respond to our citizens in need. That is our common desire, and that is what we choose to do. The path by which we bring people into compliance to use the tool that's been provided to them, that they're paying for every month effectively, we may differ on. I will tell you that on balance, we have the full backing of the City Council. They have had robust dialogue, so they get complaints as well. And so I've been standing before all 13 of our City Council persons. I'm thankful we have 13 and not 30 plus that they have here in Nashville. But so they have worked us over pretty hard on making sure that they can stand behind this as well. And so one thing I know for sure, people do not like change, but we are seeing increased compliance and generally satisfaction with the majority of the population. I know there will be some folks that will not be happy with this, but I've told our team we have to be effective and not liked. And so sometimes to be effective, there's going to be a small segment of folks. But again, I want to come back to success. I don't mind if general alarm users have one a year or occasionally and they come back and challenge us. It's literally the folks that I have to put on verified response are the ones that are repeat offenders. If we can get that down, we'll have achieved success. So again, I very much appreciate the patience and your time today and for listening to us. And we'll be back at the drop of a hat. If there's ever a question, if you'd like to have a more robust dialogue or you think of more questions, we're always open to hear those, and we'll be back up here in a heartbeat if you'd like us to.
Okay, one thing I was noticing in the transcript from the other meeting, you charge a $250 recovery fee for a fire engine or a fire apparatus to respond on a fire alarm.
Correct.
Is that all they charge, or is there another $50 on top of that? Because there was some discussion that there was an additional $50 on top of the $250.
It's a $50 fine plus the cost of recovery for the service. So the fine is the fine, and then there's a $50 or then there's $250 cost of recovery. And I just want to say, so that you all are aware, what happens to that money? Now the fine is imposed, by the court and the powers there, but the cost of recovery goes right back to. It depends, whether it was a fire or police, but it goes back in proportion to the budgets of police and fire and nowhere else. It is restricted to those uses, so I can't use it to pave roads or pay people or give raises. It goes right back into the operating budget to pay for overtime for police and fire.
There's no action required on the board. This was just y'all coming forward to provide us a deeper explanation of your policy and practices.
And I wanted you to be aware of who we were, and so I'm the accountable party to the mayor for this, and so you can look right at me, and I just wanted you to know who, if you had a question, you could reach out to. And again, as I say, I'm happy to provide more information or embrace a deeper dialogue with y'all, and I do very much appreciate what y'all do each and every day, and thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today.
Any more questions before they go?
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
On me. I did.
I had a party.
Did.
You didn't get to
That,
go.
unfortunately,
I had
actually,
my own party.
Right, that's what I heard.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Your food's here if you want to take a break. Okay, I'm just talking.
We're going to take a 30-minute recess.
All right, thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Ms. Vest, I think the legal report is up next.
Yes, ma'am, I'll turn that over. Attorney?
All right, good afternoon. We have the first one on the legal report. It's case number 2019068. 961. The summary is that the complainant made a bid to install cameras at a university in Tennessee. Complainant stated he believed that the respondent had also submitted a bid to install cameras at this university, and when he looked up respondent's information, he could not find a license for him. Our investigator spoke with the individuals at the university. The purchasing agent for the university knew respondent from a previous company approximately 6 years prior. The purchasing agent stated that he contacted respondent to ask if they were interested in submitting any bids for the project. The purchasing agent stated he never heard from respondent and that there were no bids or offers submitted by respondent for this project. Our investigator was unable to get in contact with the respondent, and complainant did not have any proof of any bids or offers submitted by respondent for this project. So the recommendation is to close.
Why would we even hear that? I mean, I'm not trying to say we've done anything wrong, but I mean, clearly that's that's pretty blatant.
If I could close it administratively, I would love to.
Right.
When we get these complaints, all the information that we had from the complainant was that he said, "Here's the respondent's name. The respondent was submitting these bids." We didn't have any other information. The respondent did not reply to that. So at that point, we sent the investigator out. First, I dispatched him on his instructions to say, "Go to the university, see what proof there is there." He said that there wasn't any at that point. So
When they even said,
right,
he never even responded to us, that should have been the end of it. But
right.
I understand.
So again, unfortunately, because it's a complaint that's been opened, the board has to hear it to close it.
And just to add to what Jesse is saying, the board would have to delegate that authority to the board office in order to close those types of complaints.
I know in the past some of the more simpler ones we have delegated that out, and I know it has to be a specific thing, but anyway, I'm just talking here.
No, you're fine. I appreciate it. And I do put that information in the legal report as well, because sometimes when the complainants find out that cases are closed, they'll contact our office or the complaints coordinator, ask why it was closed, and their first step is they send them what was written in the legal report. So to make sure that everyone's on the same page of what all the facts were and the reason why. So that way, they know the board was apprised of why.
Okay. We have a
Motion to
motion.
concur with council.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Harvey, a second by Mr. Fraker to concur with our council's recommendation. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you. Number 2, 2019074271. The summary is the complainant entered into a 5-year contract with the respondent on January 25th, 2017. Complainant filed this complaint as she wished to cancel her contract and was told she would owe an early termination fee. Complainant stated that she never signed a contract with the respondent and that her contract was sold to respondent without her notice. Complainant further stated that the respondent was charging her a higher monthly rate than what she contracted to pay. Respondent has a registered DBA and stated that it provided notice to the complainant that the respondent would be operating under the DBA name. Respondent provided a copy of the contract between complainant and the original company. The contract stated complainant could be charged a higher monthly rate than the original rate after the first 12 months of the contract and pursuant to certain procedures, which complainant could object to and have the contract terminated without fee or only be charged the original rate. The respondent further provided information as to how it complied with the contract, the increased monthly rate, and the early termination fee. Further, respondent offered to discount the early termination fee as a gesture of goodwill. There was no evidence that respondent did not comply with the contract, and complainant cooperated with our investigation. Or I should say respondent cooperated with our investigation. Recommendations to close.
Now, once again, do you notify the complainant of your findings so that they're just not left out in the dark, correct?
In which way?
Well, I mean, they filed a complaint and you've done an investigation. Do you notify the complainant on what the findings are?
They are notified after the decision of the board.
But, I mean, at some point, they're notified and told, this is what we found, this is what action we took, or...
If they follow up on it. Unfortunately, we don't... We send a letter to the
Right.
complainant to let them. Oh,
Right. We don't send them a copy of the legal report. We don't send them a copy of our findings. What we do is we let them know the board's decision. The board, in this case.
That's what I'm asking.
Right.
You let them know.
We let them know the board's
something.
decision, yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
And
It's
if they
not
ask for
incumbent on
follow-up-
them to call you and say,
No.
whatever happened, you notify them as soon as it goes before the board.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Keith?
I was going to make a motion that we concur with council's decision, but I was also going to say in that motion that we should let the complainant know that is more of a civil matter, more than something that falls under our purview, so.
And I can send them, and I think email was the way that we had communicated with this complaint. I'd have to double check, but we can send them certainly and just say specifically that this is a civil matter. They will still get that same letter that says the board voted to close it, if they have any questions, who they can contact. But I can make that addition as well.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Harvey to concur with council's recommendation to close, but with a letter of explanation to the complainant. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second by Mr. Richard. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Number 3, 2019-075-701. The summary is that the complainant received an advertisement in the mail from respondent for camera systems. The advertisement also stated respondent was licensed, bonded, and insured and offers 10% off of your first service call or first installation. Respondent claims that is a camera system and access door control system reseller and that it subcontracts all installation work to a qualified alarm company. According to Respondent's website, it appears to provide electrical and technological services, which includes the sale of cameras. Even if Respondent is legitimately a reseller or subcontracting actual installation work, it still appears to be holding itself out as an alarm system contractor. So the recommendation was to authorize a formal hearing with a consent order with a $1,000 penalty for unlicensed activity as it relates to TCA code 6232304A. And 304A is the one for holding or acting as an alarm systems contractor.
Bonded is not licensed at all.
That's correct.
I mean, they're not even in our industry in any way.
And we followed up as well to see if they had a contractor's license, and we could not find that either.
I'll make the recommendation that we concur with council with the $1,000 civil penalty.
Second. Yes.
We have a motion by Mr. Fraker, a second by Mr. Cockcroft to concur with our council's recommendation. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Number 4, 2019-078-581. The summary is the complaint was made that respondent was operating without appropriate licensure. Respondent has a valid contractor's license with an electrical classification. Respondent is recognized by the board as being exempt from this board's statutes based upon its CE license, and CE is actually that abbreviation for the electrical license. There was also an issue recognized about respondent doing business as a contractor in a name other than the one that's licensed. However, that would be an issue for the contractors board, so the recommendation was to close.
I'm not opposed to your recommendation, but aren't they also supposed to register? We might want to send them a notice that are they not supposed to? This is a question for staff. But is a contractor not supposed to register with your department?
Yes, they
Exempt
should be
list.
on the exempt list.
And I believe I'd have to
They
double
are-
check, but I think that's why I wrote as they're recognized by the board as exempt. I
Right,
believe.
they have a different name.
Oh, okay. So you're saying this other name, they are registered
Right.
as exempts? Okay.
That's why we're going to refer it also to the contractors board.
Correct.
More questions?
Are we sure that they are operating as this other licensed company? I mean, if they're operating in a different name, does it have the same address or something? Or that's their response that they're...
I believe they provided a copy of that letter, and it was a very similar name. It was just a slight deviation, but they're operating, on both sides. But they've got
Maybe it's ABC Electric and the other's ABC Alarm Company or Camera Company.
something similar. And I think it was even less of a derivation than that with adding something. I think it was more of, I can't remember, and I don't want to say in case it breaks anonymity.
I'd make a motion to concur with recommendations of our council to close.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Cockcroft, a second by Mr. Harvey to concur with council's recommendation. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Number 5, 2019-078871. The summary is the complainant purchased a home in April 2019, and as part of that, took over an alarm system from the previous homeowner. Complainant was dissatisfied with the services from the respondent and was having difficulties in canceling its services, so he then filed this complaint. Respondent canceled complainant's services and waived all early termination fees as requested by complainant. Recommendation is to close.
Make a motion to concur with council. Close.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Fraker, a second by Mr. Harvey to concur with council's recommendation. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Number 6, 2019-079581. The complainant alleged that respondent does not have a qualified agent and has not had one since mid-July 2019. Complainant also alleged that respondent's sales associates are not properly licensed. Respondent was granted an extension to obtain a qualified agent to November 23, 2019. Respondent provided a list of employees with documentation of their licensure and a description of their specific duties. There was no evidence of respondent having employees performing work without appropriate registration, certification, or licensure. Respondent added his new qualified agent effective November 19, 2019. So the recommendation is to close.
Make a motion to concur with council's decision.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Harvey, a second by Mr. Fraker to concur with council's recommendation. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
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 All opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you. Number 7, 2019-079731. This is a companion case to the one that was mentioned above. Like that one, this complaint alleged that respondent sales associates are not properly registered. Respondent provided a list of employees with documentation of their licensure and a description of their specific duties. There's no evidence of respondent having employees performing work without appropriate registration, certification, or licensure. Recommendation is to close.
What's going on that two different people would file the same complaint against this company? I mean, it's almost like where there's smoke, there's fire.
It's the same complainant. The respondent actually has two different names, so they filed it against both names.
Same complaint, in other words.
Yes.
Make a motion to concur with council.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Harvey, a second by Mr. Richard to concur with council's recommendation. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you. Number 8, 2019-070491. Complainant entered into a contract with respondent in February 2018 for a 60-month contract to provide alarms and monitoring. Complainant stated that the technician who installed the systems was never able to give her any information on his license or registration. Complainant stated it made this complaint after her bills increased from the original contract terms without notice and after she asked for a copy of her contract. She was provided a copy of her contract that was electronically signed by her. However, she did not recall ever giving permission to electronically sign a contract and stated this was the first time she received a formal contract from respondent. Upon receiving this complaint, respondent stated it would immediately cancel the complainant's contract. Respondent's website does not show that it does work in Tennessee, and no license could be found for respondent on the website or in core. Respondent never provided any information regarding any Tennessee licensure to our investigator and instead said it would agree to cancel all services for complainant. Respondent also stated in an email to our investigator that it would no longer perform installation or provide services, which was assumed to mean in Tennessee, as its website still shows it has licenses in multiple other states. Recommendation is to authorize a formal hearing and send a consent order with a $1,000 civil penalty for unlicensed activity as it relates to Tennessee Code annotated Section 6232-304A.
Is this company in a bordering state or something that,
They have offices in multiple states. And it was strange because multiple bordering states, for example, and they have licenses in those states, but they did not show on their website any Tennessee licensure, and we're not sure. We had, they didn't answer all of our investigators' questions, specifically as to how many contracts they have in the state of Tennessee.
but their office is in another state, not in Tennessee?
As far as we know, with the proof that we have, this is the only contract that they had in the state. But again, we didn't get an answer to that.
We don't have a clue who actually did the install, per se. Was it actually the company, or was it Bubba in his truck, and he sold the contract to this other company?
I believe from looking at the contract, it was with Respondent, that the contract had Respondent's name on it. So even if they would have subcontracted out, it doesn't appear that it was a licensed entity who then sold it. It appears that it was Respondent. We're not sure if it was a subcontractor or an employee.
I make a motion to concur with recommendation of our council to authorize a formal hearing and send a consent order with a $1,000 civil penalty.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Cockcroft, a second by Mr. Fraker to authorize a formal hearing and send a consent order. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Number 9, 2019-077551. Complainant alleged that he worked for Respondent and provided internal training for them. Complainant alleged that Respondent submits fraudulent training records on its renewals to the board, and that it allows unregistered agents to provide monitoring and take calls for customers in Tennessee. Respondent stated that complainant was recently terminated for cause by Respondent, and that he made this complaint on the same day that he was fired. Respondent provided a list of its registered employees in Tennessee and stated that although its call and monitoring centers may have individuals who are licensed in some or all states, where they would need to, although its call and monitoring centers may have individuals who are licensed in some or all states where they would need to be registered, the Respondent's computer system specifically only allows employees with Tennessee registration to provide services for Tennessee customers. Respondent also provided a statement and information from an individual who provides its internal trainings and handles renewals. It appears complainant's allegation was that Respondent's employees were not adequately completing internal trainings, which would not have been required for its employees' renewals. Based on complainant's position within the company, it appears unlikely that he would have had firsthand knowledge of any fraudulent information being submitted by Respondent to the board or of any unlicensed activity. Further, statements were obtained from the individuals complainant stated would be witnesses or who could corroborate his allegations. These witnesses did not corroborate any of complainant's allegations, and some of them further cited misconduct by complainant while he was an employee of Respondent. There was no evidence of unlicensed or unregistered activity, nor was there any evidence of Respondent submitting any fraudulent information to the board outside of complainant's statement and allegations, which appear unsupported. So the recommendation was to close.
Does this company have at least 4 people registered in the state of Tennessee?
Yes, at close to 100.
Okay.
If not more than that.
I'll make the recommendation to close with, concur with council and close.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Fraker, a second by Mr. Cockcroft to concur with council's recommendation to close. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
We have one more that was added as an addendum. If everyone has a copy of that, if not, I can provide additional copies. Okay, thank you. Would you like me to read just the new information or go through the prior information as well?
All on the record.
Thank you. Okay. So this is case 2017060071. This is an industry complaint. Complainant alleges that Respondent was advertising on Facebook to install security cameras without a license. Respondent Respondent responded to the complaint and states that he does asphalt sealing and installs self-monitoring Samsung security cameras from Sam's Club that require no monthly fees or monitoring. Respondent states that the complainant is a competitor who's trying to create confusion about his business. Respondent states that he has a business license and he does asphalt sealing and pressure washing. Respondent also states that he puts up self-monitoring Samsung security cameras from Sam's Club. Respondent states that there are no monthly fees or monitoring included. So that recommendation, when that was initially presented, was to issue a letter of warning regarding TCA Section 6232-304, prohibiting the sale, installation, and servicing of television or still cameras without certification. The decision by the board was rejected, and the board authorized instead a formal hearing and elected to send a consent order with a $1,000 penalty. It was then represented. Respondent stated that he had helped his neighbor to install a wireless door monitor and thought it was fairly simple, so he added it to his business card. He had recently agreed to take off the offering security cameras on his business card and Facebook page. Respondent mainly does asphalt sealing and landscaping jobs, but he is sort of a, quote, jack of all trades guy, quote, end quote. So that recommendation was to send a letter of warning and close. The decision by the board was rejected, and the recommendation was to continue again with the $1,000 penalty. So it was represented again. It said respondent had set up wireless cameras from Sam's and the self-monitoring app for his neighbor and charged him about $100. Although respondent added these services to his business card, there's no evidence that he continues to perform these tasks. Respondent's main business is pressure washing and laying asphalt and some landscaping. All of the respondent's posts on Facebook show his asphalt and pressure washing business. No posts have been made regarding the installation of cameras. It is believed that the civil penalty does not match the severity of this matter or the possible public harm. So that recommendation was to issue a letter of warning. The decision was rejected to continue with the original decision. So then this was my new information I received yesterday. This is why it was as an addendum. I apologize that it wasn't on there previously, but again, this was all new information. This matter was set for a hearing, which was continued to January 24th, 2020. The complainant now states that he wishes for this case to be closed and for this matter to be dropped with some type of warning for respondent. Complainant stated he does not want to cooperate with this matter despite being a licensed alarm contractor himself, as this case has caused stress on him and he does not believe this matter is worth pursuing, as he found out respondent had only installed a few cameras. As complainant no longer wishes to cooperate in this matter, respondent took down his Facebook picture and stated, quote, installing cameras, end quote, as of December 17th, 2019, and respondent provided proof that he has a new business card that does not show anything about offering to install cameras. The recommendation is that this case would be appropriate to close with a letter of warning, as proof has been offered, or the proof that will be offered at trial will now be minimal, since complainant was the only one who heard respondent's radio ad, and the rest of the proof will have to come from the admissions by respondent. So the new recommendation would be to do a letter of warning. Just for clarity, if the board does not elect to pursue that, we still have it set for a hearing that could continue or could go forward.
So the complainant has withdrew his complaint.
Yes, he called me last night. He is a police officer, and he had stated that he no longer, he kind of gave me some of his backstory, but he had stated he no longer wants to move forward with this, that he has talked to respondent. Apparently respondent has called him a number of times, that he gets very upset about the letters that I have sent him, and he, at this point, complainant wishes to no longer pursue this.
And from what you can tell, he has taken down his ads, and you feel like he's not installing cameras or attempting to.
That's correct. I was on the phone with him last night, the respondent, as I explained to him how to remove the picture from his Facebook, then verified that it was taken down. And I actually met with him today, and he provided a new business card that no longer had the language that he was offering to install cameras. Based on the proof that I believe that we could show, He had basically admitted that he had done maybe 2 cameras. Again, they were those ones that were purchased from Sam's Club, and he had done them for the neighbors.
Based upon our earlier meeting today, I'm going to concur with council on this one and agree, just send a letter of warning.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Fraker, a second by Mr. Cockcroft to concur with our council's recommendation in this represent. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
And that
Thank you,
concludes the
sir.
legal report.
Ms. Best, which do you want to do next?
We'll go into my administrative matters. This is the monthly report that we sent out for October and November. It's the same report basically that I send out to you every month. There's nothing very new on it. Just tells about when Ashley and the attorney and I met, and then I do a monthly financial meeting. And you had 8 complaints, and I think we heard 7, and then it didn't, something like 7 today. The next thing on there is the budget review. Get my fingers here. Okay, I have the information from October of 19. And right now, the year-ending balance is $33,694. We won't go into the reserve, if you don't mind. If you don't have any questions on that, we'll just move right along. Legislative update, we do not have any. A request for extension, we do not have any from anyone. And we don't have a criminal history review. So we can go straight on to the education report if you'd like.
Have our applications been down, or we just haven't had any?
Just hadn't had any to review.
Well, that's good.
Yes, I would think so. Everything that we've been seeing, we've been able to take care of in the office.
Great.
All right, I believe the first thing we did, we gave this report to Scott. I mean, the training here. FED Learning Center, Fire Alarm Systems, 13 hours for initial and continuing education.
The class looks good. They had submitted it, I believe, for initial application and continuing education. I'm sure it'd be fine for continuing education. It says it's 2 days. I don't know, do we have any specific definition of what's required for initial application? It does say it's a proctored test by a third party. Each student completes a test at the end of the course, proctored by a third party, other than the instructor. My only concern would be initial application. This one is about fire, so it looks like it would be good for initial application for fire if we think this is enough training. Typically, isn't it like a 3-day course or something? It's some of the classes we've had in the past.
I think we've looked at level 1 or equivalent, right?
And those typically, aren't they?
3 days.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or something?
3-day class, yeah.
This one says it's a 2-day class, but then they say it's 12 hours of training.
Right, that they have, on their form, they've asked for 13 hours.
Oh, they did? I thought I saw 12, but, oh, you're right, 13, okay.
But they're asking for approval, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's given enough hours with our current statutes, right?
Right. I don't believe
So
the statute has any, it doesn't have any quantity of hours. It just says equivalent to some of the other courses that don't even exist anymore. I think level 1 as it was at the time doesn't even exist.
Right.
They did check off for the classification of fire, which would be appropriate. Continuing education is no problem. My only concern is initial application. I'm open for discussion on that. Y'all have got the copy of the, I think, on there as well. And that's the only class they have, is that right?
Yes, the one they've submitted.
That's what I meant, the only one they've submitted. But I would be fine approving it for continuing education, and I don't know if that was their desire. You know, a lot of times people check everything on these.
So do you want me to go back and talk to them and see if what do they need to do? Give some more hours for initial? Or was the course not really for initial application? So we're just talking about it doesn't have enough hours.
And it may be comparable to some of the other classes when you include the test, because I don't know if they've included the test in this time, because I believe typically those 3-day classes is including the test.
Yeah, the test happens while you're on site.
Right. It sounds like it might not in this case. Maybe they'll send them to one of the testing companies or something. But I would recommend we approve it for continuing education and maybe get some more clarification that you could bring back to us for another meeting for the initial application.
All right, we'll go ahead and say for continuing education only, and then I'll get with them to see actually how long it is and see if it includes the testing. All right, Keith, we gave you one. KANWHA TechWin, TECHWIN America. They want 18 hours of continuing education.
Where is it on the iPad? I'm not seeing it. Under A, but at the end of that other one? I got you.
This is under.
Well, I was going to say I didn't recognize it in the other part. Anyway, I did review that course, and they were just asking for continuing ed on that one. And I'm trying to find the beginning of it again. But anyway, it was good for the hours they were asking for continuing ed. I can't find what I'm looking for on here, but
Okay, then you would say
It's actually B.
it's B,
Okay.
actually going to be on B, education under B.
In page 139.
Page 139. Is that what you said? 139? Okay.
yeah, there we go. Yeah, they were on 18 hours of continuing ed. This was a big old long course too. I think it said it was 3 days. But I thought it was good. It was good for what they were asking for on continuing ed.
Like that you're going to approve it for continuing education?
Yes.
For the 18 hours. All right. Lou, you have one. Security Industry Association. They want 1 hour, initial app and continuing ed.
Well, it's fine for continuing ed, but it certainly is not for initial. So I think, again, and Scott mentioned, I think they just probably checked that by mistake.
Right, 'cause
So,
we
but
don't
good for
usually give it
continuing ed.
for an hour.
Right, obviously. So, but good for continuing ed, 1 hour.
Good. And see, let's see, Doug, you got two. You got
Yeah, you gave me the big ones.
TN under TNESA, the association, 10 fire certification, 16 hours. They want continuing ed, initial app, and employee training.
Which page are we on the iPad?
Should be the
174.
first page of,
Are we back under A again?
no, under B. There he goes. Yes, this company, so I know a little background on them, just for the record.
It's the Tennessee Electronic Security Association? It's
Yes.
the association, okay.
Well, it's the association submitted the application where the Tennessee Electronic Association and the National Electronic Association parted ways. We had to, the Tennessee Association had to find new trainers. So this is the new company instead of ESA or NTS training. And I've reviewed all of them previously, and they are good to go for both, for all their. Boy, I can't get back to the beginning.
Okay, so actually it's the same. It's just the one's asking for, the first one is that fire certification, and the second one is the security certification, 16 hours versus 24 hours. But they all want continued ed, initial application, and employee training.
Right. And that they, yeah. Let me borrow yours a minute. Sorry. It's not wanting, so. There we go. 16 hour, let's see, this is the Tennessee Fire Certification, 16 hours. Yes. They marked all of the above. And I'm good with that on these courses. For initial, and if you want to do if you want to get your continuing ed and spend 16 hours there, you sure can. So.
We're going to approve both of these for continuing ed, initial application, and employee training?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Looks like all the courses were approved there, except for FED Learning Center, the initial app. We're still going to talk to them about that. And the Security Industry Association, we said no on the initial application because it was only an hour. The rest of them were approved, so I would need a vote on that.
And on the TNESA, it's the two courses. One of them is like 24 hours, but the fire one is 16.
Yeah, they're two different time frames. Who is this one?
And I think the first one definitely falls within, the comparable to what they had before. But the 14-hour one, if we're going to accept that, we may need to go back and look at the other one, the FED. And these are both proctored, I guess, as well, which if it's along the same lines of the way the ESA did theirs.
I don't know anything about the FED, where that one came about. But.
Yeah, they're out of North Carolina, that company.
So what I know, Scott, dealing with the other company, I'm drawing a blank and my tablet don't go there now.
Okay, are we saying if we're going to approve the TNESA for 24, we ought to go back up and look at the FED for 13?
No, I was talking about because there's two
Yeah.
TNESA. There's one that's 24 hours, which I think that's fine. And even the 14 maybe. We might just need to reconsider these things. But the second course, they're two separate courses. You would take one for
Fire.
One for fire and one for security.
Yes. Yep. Two separate courses.
Are they submitted as two separate courses?
Yeah, it
Yes.
shows course 1 and course 2. They've got separate hours listed as well.
So are they
Page
expecting
17.
someone to take both of them for?
No, only if you're going to get, so your first one is your level, basic, what used to be level 1.
Right.
That's the Berg, which is let's see, the fire is on page 174. Let me see if I can figure out where the Berg is. Berg is on page 189. So that would be what would have been what we would have known as NTS level 1.
Okay, that's one of them they're submitting for 16 and one for 24.
Correct. And we had LJ Lyons review these, considering he's the one that had he wrote the NTS ones before all that mess happened. So the TNSA leaned on him to make sure that the courses were comparable.
And I don't have a problem with approving those. I just want to make sure we're being fair, that if we approve these at a lower number of hours, which may be adequate, I just want to be fair. I don't want to it look like, well, we approved this one from the association, but we didn't approve this one from a third party if we're just looking at number of hours.
My thought is if it's not specified that we have to have a number of hours, it's just NTS level 1 equivalent. Is that the way it reads for training and to get your fire alarm license?
And they also have to pass it. They also have to pass the test.
Well, they got to pass the test, obviously. Yeah. So I recommend that we approve this, and let's go back to yours and just change it to match. Is that
Approve both of those.
Okay, we have a motion on Mr. Fraker to approve the TNESA courses submitted 24 hours and 16 hours respectively for initial application and continuing education. We need a second.
And employee training. You
And
approved it?
employee training,
And
yes.
employee training.
And employee training? Okay.
Second.
And a second by Mr. Cockcroft. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The TNESA submitted courses are approved.
So with that being said, I'll make a motion to go back to the, whatever the name of that company.
VD Learning Center.
Yes.
And approved that 13 hours. We had the continuing education only. We were questioning initial, but now you're telling me we would approve the 13 hours for initial
That would be my
application.
motion, yes, to approve for 13 hours of initial and continuing.
They have, the way they're claiming some of the hours in the two different classes are different, so they're getting about the same amount of classroom contact and content in both of those. So I'll
Okay.
second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Fraker, a second by Mr. Cockcroft to approve the FED Learning Center class fire alarm systems is all I see, for 13 hours of continuing education and as initial application. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We still have some more courses that we haven't approved. I think yours, which one were yours?
Mine was the
Yeah, we did his.
SIA, so yeah, that one was done. We approved that one. Didn't
That was
we?
just the
I thought
1 hour
we-
course.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
that's the 1 hour that we
We
approved.
didn't vote on that one.
Oh, okay,
didn't vote on
okay. The second one was I cannot pronounce it, HANWHA, Tech Win America. And we need that one approved, along with Security Industry Association, which we said was good for continuing education, but not for initial application. We just approved those other three. We still needed to approve those two.
Okay, the SIA was Lou's. Who had the other one? Keith, was that you? What was the name of it? The name of the course, not necessarily.
Hanwha or the,
Better known as Samsung.
Well, you can't find these things.
I
There's so
know,
many
they're-
pages on these.
Trying to get back to it.
America, WinSet Professional Certification.
Where is it on the iPad?
On page 139, on part B.
Okay, let me.
Hanawa.
There it is.
Making motion that we approve this course, Hanwha Tech Win America, for 18 hours continuing education.
second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Harvey and a second by Mr. Cockcroft to approve the Hanwha 18-hour course for continuing education. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. We still need to vote on the SIA because it's not been included in any of the other motions.
Right, we still need to do the one Lou had for security.
SIA.
Yeah,
But what's the name of the course?
security project management.
And I think it was for 1 hour of continuing education, correct?
Right, we were looking at approving the
Make the
1 hour
motion,
for
please.
continuing education, but we said no to the initial application.
Make motion to approve the SPM course for 1 hour continuing education.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Richard, a second by Mr. Cockcroft to approve the security project management training for 1 hour of CEU only. All in favor, voice by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. I think that got each class addressed
Sometimes it's
individually.
easier if you just do one at a time.
Yeah.
But we were trying to literally group those together. Toby, where? Toby, did you want to address the board? All right, let's take a look. The next thing is going to be, I don't have any unfinished business. We'll move right on to the new business. We had a company ask us a question, and I did not know the answer to it. So, well, I did know that I had an answer for it, but I didn't know if it was going to be the correct answer. So I asked them to correspond with me. This, they have it on their iPads, right? It's the Guardian Protection Letter. I won't bother to read all of this, but just a portion of it. On January the 15th of 2020, Guardian will be opening a backup central station in Butler, Pennsylvania. The backup central station will serve as a secondary location to our existing central station in Pennsylvania, which operates under Guardian Tennessee Alarm license. The backup central station is located approximately 24 miles from the central station, and its sole purpose is to serve as a location for which they can be monitoring customers' accounts in the event of an emergency. If we need to utilize the backup station, the alarm monitor employees who staff the other facility will work from the backup central station until the Wardendale Central Station is once again functional. Otherwise, we will not conduct any day-to-day business from the backup central station. No employees will be assigned there. Now, I remembered you could have a warehouse and store your equipment in your warehouse, but as long as you didn't let the public come in or they didn't sell from that location. What I think they're asking is, I have a company here, there's some kind of disaster, and I need to move all my employees over here so we can continue to serve our clients.
Right, that does
They're
sound
asking me
sound
if
like
it
what
needs
it
to
is.
be licensed.
My opinion would be that it would not need to be licensed if there's not day-to-day operations there. I think they should inform us if they put it into use and they were going to be there long-term. I think they should send in a change of address at that point. This is my personal opinion. If they were operating two central stations where they actually were doing load sharing or someone could be working at both, my opinion would be that it should be licensed. But it doesn't sound like that's the case. The one odd thing about it is they reference UL, but UL requires it be further than 24 miles. This actually wouldn't meet UL, but nonetheless, if they're operating it strictly as disaster recovery, they would essentially be moving and could send us a change of address. And I don't think that the time requirement, they have some amount of time. They could actually move immediately, and I think they have. I'm not sure what the time frame of the notification is on change of address, but
Well, they'd need to notify us within at least 10 days.
right.
But in this case, they would probably send us an email as soon as possible. Something's happened, we have to move all our people over to this location.
Right. That's my opinion. Does anyone feel differently on?
You do have the definition here for backup center. A location that is capable of being staffed in order to process signals in the event of the central station become inhabitable or inoperational. This center in another location that the operator of the central station has chosen to maintain for backup purposes. That's what the backup center is.
Right.
It doesn't say licensed or unlicensed, it just gives you the definition of a backup center. So we're saying, I think what I'm hearing you say is they can contact me and tell me that there's something has happened. They'll give me a change of address from A over here to B, but they don't need to move all their employees over there and pay the transfer fee.
Well, if you actually moved, typically, I mean, I've moved my office in the past, and I just sent in a notice I was moving. I didn't have to change anything with employees, or if I remember that. I hope I did it right.
You did.
No, I mean, this is a temporary thing in case of an emergency. I agree with Scott. I don't think any action needs to be taken.
Okay, then I can send them correspondence telling them that they do not need to license that backup center.
But it does need to be strictly a backup. If they use it, they need to inform you of the change. Basically, their change of
It will in the
address.
letter.
Okay, so the way I see this is this building is sitting empty,
Right.
okay?
Yes.
There's no transfer of calls to employees in that building. All the employees that are currently registered are going to go to
Literally
this backup
move over.
building. There's no other employees that aren't registered in the
They
other
said they
location.
weren't doing anything in that facility.
Okay.
If you had a request from another central station, and they were saying that they were actually going to have people at both of them, because that's a viable, choice these days. You could have two central stations where they kind of load share, and that one should be licensed. We have several of those where companies, national companies that have multiple central stations, and they are licensed. But the difference to me is that this is strictly something beyond any requirements. They don't have to have this backup central station. At some point it is required, but at the point that UL actually requires it, there's a further distance, and it does have to be hot. It does have to be, it does have to have people that would be licensed there. What they're describing here, though, in my opinion, doesn't.
Then I'll send them a correspondence telling them that another license for that location would not be required. All right, that's all I had under new business, and I think I'm finished. Madam Chair?
Any unfinished business? Our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.